With me is my colleague Anar Tori, and Anar and I used to work together in the PM organization. I will let Anar introduce herself when her part of the session comes up. I'm the product manager of the desktops business of VMware. Today I'm going to give you a technical deep dive, well, as deep as we can be within an hour, of our new release 4.5 to be released very, very soon. I was told that I can disclose that we will release it in the first half of September 2010, this year. So soon after you unpack yourself, come back to your home, you'll probably see it coming. But I can't tell the exact date. There's only like 15 days, so you give and take. All right. So this is the some logistic stuff, some standard disclaimer. Whatever I said is I cannot stand by the whole true, nothing but true thing. If any last minute change, it's because the product changed and because I lied to you. No. So anyway, I'm going to stay on the light side because you guys probably have lunch and I want to just cheer you up. And also, I was told that there will be an eval for me after this session. Please go to the computer, and I can't collect my commissions unless you're 100% satisfied, all right? Just like your car salesman. And, all right, so the light stuff away. So let's dive into the heavy stuff. So, some of you, or many of you, are on the IT side, and this is probably not new to you. Our workforce, the end users, are pretty spoiled these days. They are spoiled with endless choice of devices and anywhere, anytime access, unless you're in this room, to contents and to your applications in the internet, right? YouTube, any game, you name it, many of them, created around this area, right? Singer and all that, right? And they come to expect, they will have the world on their fingertips when they come to work. But when they come to work, this poor guy on the right-hand side, he has to worry about security, compliance, and budgetary issues, low cost, of course, right? And when she comes to work, you hand her, you show her a cubicle, and there was this desktop sitting there. And she's not that happy because she cannot take that desktop with her. Of course, you can give her a laptop, but then if she lost her laptop, put the computer on it, all the data will be lost, right? So there's this contention. And she also wants to not use the VPN, then get to the data she wanted. And if she lost her laptop, she can use any other devices to replace her laptop, to work the same way she used to work. But that's why this guy on the right-hand side had a lot of gray hair, because she has to balance the two. So it's not a very happy world we are today. And we believe we can change that. We believe the solution is the cloud. We believe the solution is virtualization. We believe that the guy on the right-hand side, the IT persons, can still have his flexible assets, can still have his infrastructure and his control, his SLA, while satisfying the needs, anytime, anywhere access, using any device. Great. That's a great vision. Everybody wanted to believe that. And we want you to believe that. But we want you to believe that, not brainwashing you, but show you how we get there. So that's why we show you the three-step process. And specifically, when it's relevant to desktop, you start with desktop virtualization. The journey towards end-user computing starts with virtualizing the desktop, because a desktop is an experience, but doesn't have to be bound to the hardware. It doesn't have to be that piece of iron under the desk, or doesn't have to be that on your lap, right? So you start virtualizing your laptop, maybe one by one, start virtualizing your application using our Thing Apps technology. But, I have customers telling me that, hey, I have a couple thousands of Thing Apps, right? And they all, in certain form, many of them application, nothing else. In certain forms, and many of them written in arcane languages, on arcane systems like Windows, right? And and I can't move them, right? So you start virtualizing your desktop, putting into data center, starting to take control over the desktop, start decoupling it from the OS, from the bare metal, from the hardware that you have. Then the next step is, as you may have already heard about, the Horizon project that we have in the work. Starting to look at the application, look at the user data, starting to decouple them. Then you put all together back into the cloud, and that's when the end user computing comes to play. Of course, in the various sessions, we will show you proof that we're working on it. We have tools we will provide, or we are already providing you to get there, in the 3 steps process. And one solid step towards that, it was desktop virtualization. And in View 4.5, as I'm going to show you, is we're going to enhance our promise. We're going to give you more tools to allow you to have the higher, even equal or higher price performance compared to a local desktop, to allow you to bring the desktop to your data center, finish the first step. And along the way, you bring the application to you, you're starting to separate out from that boxes that I described. So how can we deliver that? So let's start with looking into a typical VDI virtual desktop infrastructure. Everything starts with the vSphere in the middle, right? That's our bread and butter. And we're making it much more scalable. That's the enabler. It was even used by some of our competitors in the virtual desktop space. And that itself is not enough. So on top, we add the view connection broker, and then proliferate it to different kind of view client, what we call the client devices. There's not a black man in black kind of thing. That this is just a pointer. It's a little tricky because I don't want to trip up. So you're starting to provide a user experience via these thin client devices. That is a stateless device. You don't have to worry about what kind of device it is. We are going to provide you more and more coverage on the devices. They go through the same virtual view connection broker and provide you unified access to any asset. It doesn't have to be the virtual device. You can start the migration with even your terminal server. And on top of that, we provide you the View Composer, a unique solution allowing you to have 2 things. So efficient use of your storage, optimization for your storage I/O, as well as a single image management. Separate out your OS image from the underneath, from the application, from your user data. Many of you probably have seen this before. How many of you have seen this, has used View, and are very familiar with this architecture? Great, you're in the right place. For those of you who haven't, you're also in the right place, because I'm going to walk through it, and you're going to be so excited about it, you're going to regret you haven't seen this before. So what's new for 4.5? How many of you are planning to use Windows 7, planning to migrate, already migrated to Windows 7? A lot of you. And we see it as an opportunity for us to introduce virtualization, because Windows 7 is so much different from the XP. We have other sessions telling you how to migrate from XP to Windows 7. And we encourage you to look into virtualizing, if not all your desktops, as you migrate to Windows 7. There's a couple of use cases. For instance, if you have an XP-based application, the developer of which cannot be found, you can virtualize your XP images, park it somewhere. Then, if any user want to use that XP image, you can provide that user experience, and you can, pave the way for you to go through it. This is one of many use cases that you should consider virtualization as part of your Windows 7 migration. That's why we add Windows 7 support. It's very important for us to fulfill that promise, for us to capture that opportunity. You can run Windows 7. Our client can run on a Windows 7. 32 or 64-bit. Our agents and our guests, the guest desktop VM, also can be Windows 7, 32, or 64. Everything. So full support of Windows 7. On top, we add management capability. And we can go on, and I think now I can also walk you through the administrative experience that we provide, the whole set of tools that we enhance it around it, so allow it to be much more manageable, because managing is the selling point. Management is the selling point. And in View 4.0, we introduced PC over IP, because PC over IP is a key piece for us to enhance the end user experience. RDP is good, but it's not good enough. Right? We have to cap, and we add important features to PC over IP so that we can achieve feature parity, if we will, with RDP or even more using PC over IP. So we complete that PC over IP and we continue to improve it. And another thing is we productize our offline mode experimental feature. How many of you have used offline mode experimental? Not too many of you. Oh, okay, great. You're very forward-looking. Now we want to productize it because we believe it will address a important segment of the use cases there. And I can go into more details down the road. Last but not least, we have a new vSphere 4.1 V8 release, and we fully support it. Not only that, we actually take advantage of it to provide you a greater scalability, as you will see. So now let's dive into the user experience feature. That user experience meaning from the client perspective, from your end user perspective, what your end user can experience using 4.5. We have Mac clients now. As in 4.5, we introduce a Mac client. There's a client that works in a Mac, and it's not like Mac can be used as a virtual desktop VM. There's other issues that prevent us from doing that. But at least you can use your Mac laptops or what have you, and you will hear interesting roadmap items going forward in terms of things coming from Apple that you can use it to access our virtual desktops. And again, we productize local modes. And we also introduce an important features to the end user devices, what we call flexible authentications mechanism. The title says single sign-on. Is a little misleading word because single sign-on could mean you sign on to your client, then automatically we sign you on to the connection broker, and without more user input, it will sign you on to the virtual desktop that you use. That's the definition of single sign-on. But in addition to that, we actually could almost turn off authentication. The user doesn't have to input any authentication information. We can use the client physical property, for instance, its MAC address or IP address, to get you access into the connection broker. Sounds like counter thesis to security, but some use cases such as a kiosk mode would actually use this because any user can come towards a kiosk, and the application running on top of that plain vanilla OS would provide the authentication. And it's useful for instance, a classroom desktop access. You have education software that run on top of a standard stateless Windows XP machines, for instance. And it's great to just replace it with a kiosk mode client, a thin client. Then the kid doesn't have anything to mess up with. The worst thing he can do is to mess up with that thin client, which is just a mouse and a keyboard and just a display. We deprecate our limited functionality web client, replace it with something that we probably are very familiar with, a mechanism similar to the distribution of the VI client, where if you access the connection broker, if you do not have a client already, it will actually provide you the options to download a full function real client to you. And local modes. Local mode used to be known as offline, offline mode, but offline is misleading because offline could mean your machine is offline while it's running remotely. So now the separation is remote and local. Remote mode meaning it's running remotely in the data center. Local mode, what is it? There's some talks about type 1 and type 2 hypervisor. Some of you may have heard about it. What it means by type 1 is meaning that your hypervisor runs on the bare metal. And by introducing the local modes, we are actually implement and productize what is called a type 2 hypervisor, which means that you need an operating system on top of which you run our real client as a program. The same real client that you use to access the remote desktop will be the one that allow you to run the local mode VM. You can check out the local mode VM. And I'm sorry, I just detect that actually my voice, if I look this side, my voice is, can you hear me okay if I talk like this? No? Okay, so I better look this way. Sorry, I kind of disrupt myself a little bit. Okay. And the ideal use case for, the problem with what is called type 1 hypervisor was HCL, the hardware you support because you run on bare metal. And we feel there's a lot of low-hanging fruit and there's a lot of compelling use case to be had by just implementing what is called a type 2 hypervisor, which we offer today, which is in the local mode, such as bring your own PC to work, bring your own IT. In many use cases, you have contractors coming to work. They already have their laptops. And they come in, you can allow them to check out the VM. Everything he works on will be periodically sync back to the data center. As well, whatever that is saved locally was actually encrypted using a key agreed upon and escrow at the data center. So if the contractor done his work within a couple months or a month or so, he or she can just check in the desktop without worrying about checking the whole VM, and then you have the whole VM back. And he or she can leave and nothing was left on that laptop to be worried about. Or if you have a mobile user and regularly he or she will use a remote desktop, but occasionally when he or she need to go on a flight, want to continue working on using the same desktop, same application, he or she can check out that VM in the local mode, bring it with himself or herself, and continue to work on it. And if anything happened to that laptop, number one, you won't lose data because everything would be encrypted. The only way, if he closed the laptop, the only way he can unlock it was authenticate against the data center to get the key back out. And if he or she destroyed the laptop, then the only work that she lost was actually between when she disconnected from the network and all the work in between that time window. If she connected back in, everything will be synced up, right? So there will be a periodically backup at disaster recovery. So it's ideal for those use cases. And this just highlights a couple of those major points that I have made. And because you can just use your current view client to check out the VM, you don't have to worry about having to find the right hardware to run it. That's what the Type 2 hypervisor will enable you to do. The screenshot doesn't do justice. Because we leveraging the local resources, the multimedia experience would also be greatly enhanced. I encourage you to go to our exhibit halls or try some of the hand-on labs to try some of the local modes assets. And what is being shown here is actually running Google Earth. And you would have, this is actually running Google Earth on a Windows XP VM running locally on a Windows 7. So it's a XP on 7 experience. So with all those enhancements in user experience, I would assume your end user will be beating on your path to say, I want a virtual desktop rather than the desktop that you gave me, even the latest, greatest MacBook. I'm just kidding. But how can you manage it, right? How can you manage a large-scale virtual desktop infrastructure? So I will show you the same architecture, but I will overlay on it the key enhancement we make. And now we'll get into more detail on the admin feature we add. And we allow you to efficiently manage up to 10,000 desktop VM. In the previous release, we make a claim for 5,000. We double that. How can we do that? I will go into a little bit more detail. View Composer is still very important in a large-scale deployment, we believe. And in order to deliver and enhance our features on image management as well as storage, we add key features in those areas, which I will also go into more detail as we move along. Many of you have heard about ThingApps, and we take the first step towards ThingApp integration and management. And in View 4.5, you can use the same console, same admin console, to scan a ThingApp store and also assign those ThingApps to either a desktop pool, a group of desktops, or the individual desktops. And we're looking into further integration with projects such as Horizon, that can enhance the even like per user app store capabilities. And last but not least, the management of the simplified features, the simplified sign-on features that we offer to you, to the end user. So when I mentioned 10,000 desktop, using the kind of car salesman analogy again, I'm almost telling you, hey, we give you 500 horsepower, but how can we do that? What's under the hood? What's more credible is we sustain it by, first of all, build on top of a lot of the features that provided to us by the virtual infrastructure. But on top of that, we actually restructure our code, the View backend code, the connection broker specifically, in a federated way, which means each individual connection broker in a cluster would now be responsible for a subset of those desktop VMs residing on the VI. And only when there's a failover situation, it will redistribute those loads. So during normal operation, it will enhance the caching. It doesn't have to, not everybody has to query the same desktops for this status. So that allowed us to scale much better. And we believe with the same architecture, we can actually keep growing as we enhance our code, enhance the overall messaging system between them. So 10,000 is only the beginning. And if you attend some of the sessions offered by one of our reference customers in Japan, you will hear their plan. They already deployed 3,000 desktop VM live today as we speak. And they have planned to move to 10,000 or even more. So this is not some science fiction or some number still up there. It is happening. So View Composer, we continue to make enhancement in View Composer area, specifically also optimals for its use, because the optimal use case for View Composer is actually desktop that is relatively stateless, so that you can separate the user data, user application away from the underlying image. So the key area that we make improvement on is customization, image management, and storage optimization. And lastly, how to manage, we add management capabilities, enhance it for View Composer link clones that we call. We introduced the concept of tier storage because we recognize that your image is not a monolithic chunk. Right? In your image, you would have, for instance, your memory page files, swap files, or your temp files. Those are ones that created during the lifetime of the VM, but once you power it off, you actually have no use of it. So we separate them out. And we also separate out the base image. And we used to put the base image replica with the rest of the link clone. The link clone was the delta that, as the VM runs, whatever the user-specific data or user-specific states was saved in the delta. And they used to reside on the same data store. So if you want to enhance performance of your, you want to use high-end data storage, you have to provision the entire pool. But we allow it to separate out. So now you can actually put the master replica, basically the OS image, into a high-end, highly cached, maybe SSD data store, and put your delta disk, put the rest of the image into a lower cost, regular data store. What's the performance gain there is, lock-in storms. If all the users come into work approximately at the same time, put the whole machine, because it will be reading that sectors of the data on, off and off again, right? So there's a high cache hit rate. And if you're using actually a stateless desktop, you refresh it very often, that's even better, because now the delta you save in the lower tiers data store will actually get thrown away regularly. And you just reusing you have a very small but very highly efficient data store for a large number of View Composer desktops. And other optimization, including we now allow you to create View Composer link clones on EXX local storage. You don't have to use a SAN now to, this is especially important when you're running, say, a proof of concept, or maybe for a small group of users. You want to convince your boss that this is great, and then now you have to say, hey, here's your bill for a SAN. That probably won't fly. So this is actually a very good sales enabler. And when it comes to provisioning and customization, we used to support only what we call a quick prep, our way to customize, quickly customize your image. But it was not something that Microsoft would support. So a lot of customers give us feedback and say, why don't you support the same customization spec as I could use to, say, prepare my full clone desktop? So we add that support in. So now the exact same customization mechanism. Actually, we leverage the same one that you use for your full clone. And we enhanced what we call the 3 Rs. Refresh, meaning you actually kick all the desktop VM back to the base image. Recompose, that means you kick it back to the base image, but at the same time you can change the base image. Or rebalance, which means you can move VM to different data stores, move your link clone VMs, rebalance between multiple data stores. We used to only allow you to do that for persistent desktops, or what we call the dedicated desktop, which means the first time the user log in, you dedicate a desktop to that user. But why we do that? Because for the stateless floating desktops, in the past, your refresh or recompose is equivalent to deleting that VM, reprovisioning that VM, and copy back whatever that user data to it. We leverage what we call the snapshotting now in 4.5. That will enable you to do refresh really quickly. What the trick was actually, you imagine you have a master image, you make a link clone out of it, and then you customize it, right? Add it to the domain, customize its IP, its domain name. Right after the customization is done, but before that VM is ready to hand off to the end user, we take a small snapshot of it and park it somewhere. Then all subsequent refresh, as long as you don't change the base image, will come back to that snapshot. We just delete all the delta and bring you back to that snapshot. That allows us very fast refresh rate. And that enabled us to allow the kind of the classroom use cases, a kiosk mode use cases, where you can just fast provision hundreds of stateless desktops, use it by students in an hour also. And then when the student reset, you can just refresh all the desktop, go back to the pristine state, and then the next class can start. But students sometimes want to plan some virus or something to mess up the next class. Maybe. I'm making that up. The last piece, I'm making that up. Students are very, very smart these days. Lastly, it was the management function. As you may know, for the persistent desktop, we have what's called user data disk that saves some of the user data across refresh or recompose. We now give a new name called the persistent disk. It's the same thing because we think persistent disk conveys nature much better because we are not just for user data. You can actually save anything into it. It's almost like your virtual USB stick, so to speak. We add management feature to it. You can now detach, reattach it back. You can delete a VM and archive that persistent disk and reattach it back to the VM. And we provide you script supports for garbage collection. So just in the case where your View Composer server was out of sync with your connection program, very rare instances, but once that occurs, it's very annoying, and you can run scripts to clean it all up. Wow, that's great. That's somebody who does not have virtual desktop and has to live with user complaints. Okay, with that, great leeway to admin features. So when you get a call from the end user, what can you do? Oops, sorry. So I will hand this off to Anar, and she will walk you through the administrative enhancement in the administrative tools.
I think I saw a hand up for questions. Let's save that till the end. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome to VMworld. I'm Anar Tauri. Just a quick introduction. I've recently moved into a new role here at VMware in strategy and corporate development. But prior to that, I spent the past 2 years as a senior product manager in the desktop products team working on VMware View. And for the past year, worked on View administration. So I'm very excited to highlight and showcase to you some of the key features that we've added to the upcoming View 4.5 release. The administration improvements in this upcoming release, the key benefit here to you, our customers, is really around increased management efficiency. And so we've added a lot of different features, which I'm going to go over, that helps you to manage your deployments, large-scale deployments, much more efficiently, providing you better monitoring, diagnostics, and supportability as you go and manage your environment. So some of the key features are mentioned here, and I'm going to walk through these in more detail. So what you see here on the screen is the new administrative interface. And so, first of all, I'd like to thank many of you here in the audience who actually work closely with us as we redesign the management interface. As you know, View is managed with it's a centralized management console, and it is browser-based. We redesigned this interface in this release, and it is now based on Adobe Flex. It's cross-platform, and it was redesigned to really support objects, a large number of objects, so better performance, better scalability. We also took the user interface and the UI framework and redefined it. We showed early prototypes to many of our customers, got feedback, and have made it very intuitive so that navigation is very easy and it's intuitive. Also, the landing page now is a dashboard. It's the page that you see here. And I'll explain this in more detail when we come to troubleshooting. But this is now the landing page, which gives you a unified view of your environment and gives you very quick statistics up front. So one of the key features that we are rolling out here is role-based administration. This is a key feature that actually impeded deployment from our customers, rolling View out on a large scale. And what this now enables you to do is you can now have a view deployed and managed by Tier 1 help desk support. So instead of your VI administrators and your data center, your desktop administrators becoming the support, the first line of support for your end users, you can now actually roll it out to help desk and have them access to view administration console, give them limited functionality so that you're very comfortable with what rights they have in the system. And so delegated administration, what that enables you to do is it enables a super user administrator to delegate the management of one or more resources to other people. So for example, if you had an administrator in the central office who wanted to delegate the administration of, let's say, management of virtual desktops to the marketing department on the East Coast, to an admin who's located in the East Coast, they can now do so using this feature. At the same time, for example, if you wanted to have a help desk administrator who was only allowed to manage desktops in, let's say, the India region, and he was only allowed to reset the desktops, you can do so. And the way this works is you would actually, so we have, first of all, we have a standard roles, which are pre-built into the system. So a role has an associated set of permissions or privileges, and these are pre-built, predefined, and they come when they're installed in. But you also have custom roles so that you can define those up front. And in this particular case, help desk is actually a custom role, because one of the things we found as we talked to our customers is nobody defined their help desk function in a uniform way. I mean, people did not have a common definition of help desk. And so we wanted to make that customizable. So depending on what you want your help desk role to be, you can actually set up a role. So you're adding a role to the system here, assign privileges or permissions. In this particular case, we give them the ability to reset the desktops. And then you could populate this role with users groups in AD, in Active Directory. Once that is done, you could create a folder and put in the folder the resources that you would like this role to manage. So for example, if there were desktops belonging to a region, let's say India, you would put those desktops or desktop pools or thin apps, whatever those objects were, into that folder, and then apply this role, give access to that folder to this role. So we use LDAP-based access control, which is applied to folders, and this works in conjunction with roles to support delegated administration. Very, very powerful. The next feature here is around troubleshooting. As I mentioned before, we've added a lot of functionality around monitoring and supporting troubleshooting. So the landing page that you saw before, the dashboard, it's really broken up into a number of different areas. The first one here that you see in the left center gives you the health of the system. And the objective of the dashboard is to surface key information to administrators. So system health, it has green and red indicators and tells you very quickly whether any of your view components or your vCenter components or data stores are up or down, whether they're up and running or they're down, whether there's an issue with them. If there is, you can actually drill into this further to identify the root cause. So in this particular case, for example, we've drilled into the domain, and this is all operationally fine. But if there was a problem, you would actually see more information right here. The top right corner here gives you status of your desktop, so you can know whether they're available, they're connected. You can drill further to get more details. The bottom pane here gives you information about your data store. So you know what the usage is. You can know also what virtual machines are sitting on what storage LUNs. The top left corner here is a summary view. And it also, one of the things it highlights here, besides the things that are green and red, problematic or not is also these problem desktops. There aren't any at present, but if there were, you could actually drill into it and it filter down and will bring you to a view of what desktops are actually reporting problems or issues. And you could click into a particular virtual machine, go into the details, and know more details about that virtual machine, what ESX host it's on, the virtual center settings, etc. So what this helps you to do is, starting from here, you can quickly drill down and identify problems. Helps you with troubleshooting. The next one is around events. So one of the things we did was we revamped our event subsystem. And previously, we had different logs on each agent and broker. Now we have defined events, and each event has a unique identifier. These events are now being written into a database, and that's optional, can be provided by the customer. We would write into that database. And you can access these events in a number of ways. So the first one is they're available through the administrative interface. So through the management console, you can look at these events. You have a global view, and you also have an object level view. So you can look at events for a desktop or a desktop pool. Secondly, you can actually use your favorite BI reporting tool and use it against the database schema that we would publish to get access to this information and report against it. Next, you could use PowerShell. And so with this release, one of the key features is we provide a View Power CLI, which is an extension of PowerShell. And so administrators can now script and automate a lot of the administrative functions using View Power CLI. And then the fourth one is using the command line tool, which is VDM admin. And we have some in pre-built reports that you can access, written in CSV and XML, but you can also write your own. So the events are very comprehensive. The data collected is very comprehensive and really meets the audit requirements of an enterprise. We have a number of analysts that we've talked to. Burden Group is one of them that has looked at this functionality in detail and has said, okay, View now meets all 52 requirements for an enterprise-ready solution. So very comprehensive audit event tracking. So we track all configuration changes, user events such as who logged in, logged out, and user counts, which is max number of users in the system at any given time. How many in the audience actually use System Center Operations Manager for managing the servers? Okay, so some people do. I was expecting a larger show of hands, but looks like it's just after lunch, so people are a little falling asleep. So a lot of our customers use COM for managing their servers, and up until now they didn't have a way of actually looking at their view servers in the same simple single pane of glass and managing them. So what the View Management Pack does is it does provide you that single pane of glass. So now from within your SCOM console, you can actually manage your view servers. And the way this works is you have the SCOM agent that you would install on every view server that you want to manage, and then you'd install the management pack. And then once this is installed, it will actually go out and identify all the view servers in your deployment. It would map them out, and you can actually see the mapping in the SCOM console, and starts providing you visibility into the health of those servers by sending you alerts and giving you other indicators. And you can then actually go in and take action. Here's what it looks like. So this is a SCOM management console. And on the left here is your view deployment. Shows you a little bit about your view deployment. And it has a lot of mappings, and I haven't shown those screens. But what you see here is some alerts that you're getting related to the view servers. And in this particular case, there's a problem. You can actually take action from within the SCOM console itself and restart the service. So that, brings to an end some of the key improvements. There are many more that I have not covered, but these are some of the key improvements that we made to view administration. And I would like to invite Leben back up so that we can now open it out to questions. For those of you who leave early while we're still answering questions, please don't forget to fill out the eval form for this session. And thanks very much for your attendance.
Thanks, Carmen. And please come to the microphone to ask the question so everybody can listen to the question.
Are you ready for questions?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is it Leben?
Leben.
You mentioned that there's a plan, or some Japanese company or organization is doing a 10,000 VM pod deployment across 5 plus 2 view connection servers. And I think you mentioned that the dashboard shows a quick look at a view deployment. And I'm wondering, does the dashboard show the state of the pod or just the state of the reporting view connection server?
There's various dashboards. There's one dashboard that shows you a big table of all the desktops in the pools. It's actually organized by pool.
So by pool.
It's separated by pool, and then you can drill down into each pool, and then
but it's still the same centralized management console. So within that single console, you would be able to get to all of the information that you need.
Right.
So
with regards to that whole deployment.
Right. In other words, I would not need to go to different dashboards for the 10,000.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question for you as it relates to the Composer. With the use of the link clones, it's been really drastic for us, where you have to, all the time, if you're patching or installing software, you have to recompose and then let the link clone be recomposed. So this way you have the ability for not having to deploy one-to-one relationship. Has there been any improvement to patching and recomposing of those images or the link clones that you have out there, instead of going one-to-one relationship for installing software and patching? We'd like to use link clones, but it's very limited because of the ability where you have to recompose all the time. Any improvement in 4.5?
In 4.5, we don't have specifically things that address the recompose issue or the update issue, or specifically the user profile management. As you may know, we acquired a company called RTO, and on top of that, they also have interesting technology that allowed us to also leverage the same application experts. So currently, our standard answer is, well, you use ThingApp for your application, so you capture your application. You don't have to patch those. And now you use our profile management to preserve the user data, preserve the user data profile. But going forward, as you see in the kind of second layer, the second step, our vision was we use technology that developed on top of the RTO acquisition to provide you the user profile separation, user data separation, at the same time leveraging the Horizon. I encourage you to look into the Horizon product portfolio we are about to offer to allow you to actually separate out your application. Then you don't have to recompose, right? You have a layer, you have a modular desktop where you have, the link clone can remain the way it is, it's a stateless image, but on top of it you layer your user profile, so the dedicated desktop and the floating desktop become one of the same, because it's just your user data, your application would be dedicated, but you don't have to dedicate the image to a user, right? So that would be the ultimate solution to that problem. And we are making steps towards it, but 4.5 maybe a little too early for that.
Okay, and for patching, you still have to recompose, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, 2 questions. First one's with the link clone, and my experience with 4, when we try to recompose more than 2 pools simultaneously. We've had problems with that. I've worked with support on that. And they say you should only recompose a pool one at a time, 1 pool at a time. You shouldn't do 2 at a time. Is that going to be the case with 4.5 or?
That was highly dependent on your environment. Recompose is a little bit heavy on the I/O side. So if actually those 2 pools use the same data store, or have you're probably likely to hit the same kind of IOP limit, and actually not really the capacity limit, but the maximum bandwidth to your data store. So,
okay.
But you can, if you have Lincoln pools reside on different data stores, or didn't go through the same IOP path, then I would think it's okay. We have a customer who have highly parallel system that they can fire off Lincoln or pools as long as you schedule it carefully. So you can squeeze out your data store performance limit.
Okay, then one more question. Disk refreshes. Scheduling with 4.5. I know on 4 you can do it like every 5 days, 7 days, but you can't put a scheduled time on the weekend that says refresh this desktop pool every Saturday at 10 o'clock at night or Sunday morning. Is that available in 4.5? I
don't remember we make improvement on that. One of the limitation was task monitoring. So we that's actually high up on our list for the post 4.5 roadmap.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That, actually, you are not the first one recommending that. Thanks, but. Yeah.
You mentioned before about customizing administrative roles. Would it be unusual to create a user profile for somebody outside the organization, say a VMware support engineer, customize it to their needs, and they'd be able to come in and support the environment if need be?
Would that be an user in AD?
Yeah, most likely.
Should be able to do that.
Yeah, if it's an AD user, we are relying on the AD. Yeah. And we have roadmap item to go beyond AD, but today we are relying on AD. So as long as the user exists
as long as it's user AD.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
I was wondering if you had made any improvements or enhancements to the PC over IP protocol itself, specifically in regards to high latency connections.
We make significant improvements, but there's still work to be done. That was what the PM of the protocol himself allowed me to say. But because I'm not an expert, I have to admit, compared to him. So I encourage you to look into our assessment tools and our deployment assessment session. And also, if you don't mind, give me your a business card and I can introduce you and we can have a more in-depth discussion about it. But we make significant improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Over the last release, yes.
In authenticating a user to a View desktop, you did say that you've gone to basically supporting like a MAC address or an IP address as an identifier to get to something like a kiosk mode.
Right.
Anything else that we can do? Because I actually come from an education environment. My users are not in AD.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So is that anything in that for 4.5, or is that still post 4.5?
Yeah, that's 4.5. You don't, your user doesn't, as long as you don't need to authenticate that user before you can touch the interface of the application, then you don't need the user to be on AD. And you can relies on physical properties so that you can just, that thing,
okay, so I understand, if I have a certain MAC address or something like that, but I guess I don't want to have a View desktop be open to the world. Let's say I have an open LDAP source for my
Yeah, you can give
users.
a custom ID also that keep it to yourself. So it's a kind of a shared secret authentication, if you will. You can give that thin client a identity that your own choice, as long as within 18 characters, for instance. And then you can give it a secret password. The only catch is that secret password will reside on that thin client. So if somebody stole that thin client, it's fine, but not open to the rest of the world.
Okay, so there's at least something. So I'll read some docs. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned the Type 1 hypervisor. I Googled it while you were talking. It looks like VMware talked about it in October of 2008. So are we any closer to a client-based hypervisor, or is that still not, where are we with that?
Yeah, the local mode PM have a lot of issue by being called type 2 because it implies like 2 is less than 1 or something like that. There's no actually advantage or disadvantage. Well, there's relative merits, but we talk about the type 1 hypervisor, but the key problem we see is that we talk to the potential customers, and we said we have a limited HCL. And so in order to take advantage of our type 1 hypervisor, you have to buy new hardware. Are you kidding me? That was like 2008, the economy situation, right? So that's why we said, well, let's focus on type 2 hypervisor. Let's focus on our view client and the local mode and address that use case first. So it's a prioritization among ourselves. It's not that we, not going to work on type 1. Actually, we have put the type 1 a little bit on hold, just because we want to push out type 2 first. It's our own prioritization.
Thanks.
Based on use cases.
Can you shadow a virtual desktop from within the View console, or do you still have to use a VNC-like tool?
Great question. User shadowing doesn't make 4.5, unfortunately, and it's on our roadmap. So
you would still need to use third-party tools.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any way to get performance information? I mean, you can see errors in the admin dashboard, but if you're having everything's running, but everything's just something's kicked off like an AV scan or a patch scan, and all of a sudden performance is terrible, you still have to go to vCenter today to see that information. Is that being built into the admin dashboards?
Well, on the roadmap, eventually where we want to be is we want to actually integrate tightly with vCenter and even become a part of vCenter in terms of where we're going here. But we're not there yet. So I think the information that you have is what is available in View 4.5, and if you need information beyond that, you would still need to go to vCenter today.
And is there any future, obviously kind of the nature of how PC over IP is built, we have our use case where we want users to sort of work in and out of the office, your machine anywhere, and so when they're in the office, they're using PC over IP, but when they're out of the office, they need to use RDP if they're not going to be SSL connected, VPN connected. So how do we deal with kind of setting a default protocol or sort of managing that protocol mismatch between the two users? So we have an issue where people in the office using PC over IP get two monitors. They get multi-monitor, works great. They go home, and if they've disconnected that, they've got they have apps on both desktops. That we have problems with kind of the back and forth between PC over IP and RDP.
Yeah, great question. Actually, we have a security server that allows you to tunnel RDP, and we're working very actively on the support of security server supporting PC over IP.
What is that called?
It's still called security server, but security server working with PC over IP. The challenge there is PC over IP is a lossy protocol built on top of UDP. So we're actually working with the vShield team internally to leverage their security and network experience. And you will actually get a virtual appliance coming up that is branded as security server, but it will be supporting both RDP and UDP.
And in 4.5, is there still a relationship one-to-one security server to broker, or is that gone? Or are you going to move away from that? So right now, if you have 2 connection brokers, you need 2 security servers. Does that change?
That hasn't changed.
That won't change.
No. Okay. And by the way, the security server support for PC over IP doesn't make 4.5, so you have to wait a little longer.
Okay, I've got 2 questions. First is with linked clones. So if you have ESX, where it's say 50 linked clones, and you boot up the first clone, and that case ESX will hit and read the cold image from whichever storage it is. Now you boot up the second clone. Does VMware ESX caches the gold image? That is the same image I read like 1 minute ago, or does it go and hit the storage and read the whole image again?
That depends. That's a great marketing question answer. Actually, it's depending on which replica you're hitting, and the internal of the link clone was, say you have 3 data stores, so you have 1 master image. And the traditional implementation of link clone was you actually create 3 replicas in each data store, and then the links were created off those replicas.
So because you had 64 or whatever limit?
No, it's just because our traditional limit was the links has to create it off the local replica.
Okay.
Yeah, the 64 and others are other limits that doesn't affect this one. But but in 4.5, what you can do is you can take away that replica and actually put it into a separate data store. So to answer your question is, if you have a single replica for all the links out there, then the second, third, whatever boot, it will just read from the same data store, same replica. So it's not reading from the master image, but reading from a replica. So that way you can actually optimize it by, provisioning a very high performance and enable caching. Then you're actually hitting that cache all the time.
But that caching, can ESX do the caching, or you have to use third party?
All right.
It's like Windows Server, you can say caching.
ESX caching is a top secret project that we're working on in the future. And post 4.5, you will see actually even more enhancement. Okay. So I'm very itching to tell you, but I have to kill you. But anyway, okay. Yeah, it's great question and great suggestion. We're working on it.
Second question is broker coexistence. So if you got multiple brokers and you want to have some terminals with PC over IP, do you support coexistence? Somebody like using a PC over IP machine, disconnected, go to another terminal, use RDP, disconnect, go home, have Zen desktop, connect through that, same session, disconnect, reconnect through different brokers.
Same desktop, I heard.
Same session.
Oh, same desktop. I'm sorry,
same
I'm
desktop.
very sensitive to the other kind of name.
Yeah, so same desktop, but without rebooting.
Yeah, you can switch protocol. Yeah.
Okay, we can switch.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the local mode. When you use a local mode, can you use it with persistent virtual desktops or just with a non-persistent?
Great question. Actually, I forgot to mention, local mode currently only persistent, only dedicated.
Only persistent.
You only can check out that.
And can you so does it mean that you don't manage the base image for these machines?
You can still check out an SVI image. But once the image was checked out, actually we make a copy locally.
Once you check it out, it's not managed anymore.
It's not single image anymore.
Okay.
You're right.
All right. Thank you.
I just have some clarity from what some of the other guys were saying. From what he was saying, connecting back to the same desktop using two different protocols, because PC over IP is still not supported as far as tunneling through security server or the SSL portal.
Okay. Right.
You connect via PC over IP internally, you go home, you're not going to get to it via RDP, correct?
You could
That
if
same
you switch
desktop.
to use RDP, and if your desktop support both, then it's fine. Right.
Okay, so
you terminate a session on PC over IP.
Disconnect. It's still
Right.
running
Disconnect,
VM.
you
I
go
can come in
back
through RDP.
and-
The broker will take me back to that PC.
Right.
Okay.
Actually, on the view client, there's a drop down.
Right, RDP or PC over IP.
Exactly.
But you still can't tunnel PC over IP through the web portal or the security
No,
server.
not yet. Not for 4.5.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any more questions? Okay.
We're going through a desktop refresh, a global image refresh
Mhm.
to Windows 7, and we have a governance problem with my team is the server team, and then there's a desktop team. So maybe do we have like some, case studies or anything, or advice other than the technology advice on how I kind of handcuff?
Yes, you're not the first one telling us about the contention between the desktop team and right.
Actually, you may get some better answers from the audience here.
Yeah, talk to the peers, or talk to BTMU, the customer that kind of talk about their large-scale deployment. And I believe we also have as part of our capacity planning and all, we have some study as to what is a typical successful implementation of the desktop. But eventually, the ultimate answer to your question was I'm sorry, I had to point to the roadmap, was actually having the server team manage the resource as a cloud, right, as compute and storage resource that's highly fungible. and just carve out a part for the desktop team. Of course, we are still working towards that. And when it comes to planning and how to plan a successful desktop rollout, we have other sessions that we can go look at, such as planning, even including capacity planning, and also assessment of your desktops, and also talk to other roundtable colleagues, such as the large-scale customers. There's no super bullet for it, unfortunately. Yeah, right.
There's also a session on business value and TCO,
right.
and you should go to that one too. Yeah. Okay, so I think we are at 4 o'clock.
So I welcome your question. Just come to me and afterward, then we can exchange it.
Thanks very much for coming.